All right, good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, April 28th, and this is the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee, returning to our discussions of, or I should say, continuing the operating and capital budgets. And we have a 9 o'clock meeting that will focus on recreation, and then the MC-EDC funding. And then at 11 o'clock, there'll be a joint committee meeting with Ed that will be recreation, school-based programs, and WorkSource Montgomery. So I'm not totally sure if we are going to need to really move swiftly or if we're going to have enough time to deliberate methodically. I think we'll just have to see how it goes, but we certainly have a lot of substance before us today. So looking forward to our conversations. And thank you, Vivian Yao, for your preparation on various memos, and Jean Smith as well. And of course, we are joined by our teams at REC and OMB and various partners. So I'll see if my colleagues want to make any introductory comments, and if not, we'll proceed right into the packet. Okay. Vivian, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So for fiscal year 22, the executive's recommending total expenditures for the Department of Recreation of $46,475,951. It's a slight decrease of $319,219, or a 0.7% from the fiscal year 21 level. The first item that we have for just consideration for the committee is just racial equity and social justice. Our council staff had heard from OMB that OMB is working in the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, has been working with the various departments to get information. And we are trying to get a baseline of what departments are doing in terms of that topic. Council staff will develop an action plan that will evaluate the information from the different departments. And Recreation reports that it has started the work. It's established a work team. Co-leads have gone through training. They're beginning to schedule team meetings, and they're in the process of starting to track census data to be overlaid with current registration data. So on this, the committee may want to return at a later date to discuss the data that Recreation should collect and track to show that it's making progress in this area, as well as the supports that the department needs in order to do this work. You know, they've been very stretched with, the COVID pandemic and trying to provide services and having staff, at home and doing a lot of different things. So.
Okay. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I was having some speaker issues. Good morning to the team and to my colleagues. I just wanted to note, I do agree that we should return to this. I wanted to note, and Briley or your team can maybe speak to it briefly, of what what at least right now you're looking at in the sense of racial equity and social justice, and suggest to you that, and I'm assuming this is one of the things you're looking at, availability of programming across the county at different recs and breaking that down by race and ethnicity and going through, all that kind of analysis so that we can really, as we look to come out of this pandemic, when we know certain communities were hit really hard and are going to need a lot of support, just how you're factoring that in. So if you want to speak to it briefly, I do think it warrants us coming back to when you have some of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to speak to it. We have started some of that work. We have modified our active database system so that we can actually capture demographics, which we did not do before. So we've had that for just a little bit over a year. So we're starting to pull that data. And just to your point, Councilmember Jawanda, we're going to overlay that with where our programs are on a GIS mapping so that we can really see where the gaps are. I've been here for a long time, and one of my biggest concerns is the pay to play. We've got to change that dynamic that we have. And we've started to do a lot of that, change how we structure our programming in different communities and try to make sure that it's affordable and reachable to them by transportation and by communication, which is some of our gaps as well. So we are definitely starting some of that work.
That's great to hear. I appreciate that. All right, thank you. Well, I look forward to coming back to it as we get more information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. I'll just add to that, in addition to ensuring that we have really comprehensive, we're kind of like flooding the zone in communities that are more disenfranchised. There are, because of inclusive zoning, we have lower income residents all over the county, including in the more affluent neighborhoods. And it's really important for us to be able to, recognize that they're there and provide programming, even in an affluent school setting. Somehow those kids need to have, they can't be the only kids who don't have an activity after school because they can't afford the athletics team or whatever, And I have always worried that we aren't properly accounting for that in our broad thinking about how to prioritize communities. I know that we do it through really good targeted programming, like the Scotland community, has specialized programming and so forth. But, there are kids in, large apartment buildings in downtown Bethesda, thanks to our MPDU law. And, they need some access to programming as well. So it's just something I don't know yet how to systematically address it. But I just want to flag, as we often talk about these issues, we need to be going all out in the schools that have 90% farms. We need to have something for those, even when a school is 10% farms, or, we need to have programming for that 10%, and I think that that's something that just sometimes gets washed out a bit in the broader conversation. So anyway, just wanted to add that. I saw some hands, Councilmember Freeze.
Yeah, well, first of all, amen to everything said by both colleagues. Really appreciate it. I think obviously targeting concentrations of poverty is a key area in education and after school programming and access to services. And that's something that the county has really focused on. But Councilmember Reamer, your points are really important. I've raised this, ultimately Bethesda needs a rec center. I've talked about that a lot. And one of the main reasons that I've talked about that is that when I talk about it, people respond and say, well, there are lots of facilities in Bethesda and amenities in Bethesda. And I said, how many of those are public and are free or close to free? And the answer is just about none. And not everybody who lives in Bethesda can afford to go to a private gym. And as we make all of these efforts to create new housing opportunities and access to communities, we have to make sure that there are services that go along with them. I mean, that's our mandate. That's our job. So it's a really important point. I do agree. There's a lot of work to do, and this is part of it that gets lost. But public access to quality services is something that every child, every aging adult, every person in between in Montgomery County should be able to access. And so figuring out how we make those investments and make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind is really, really important. And it's critical that we not overgeneralize communities on either side and think that, this community and this is the monolithic way that community looks, the type of family that community is made up of. And so I just think it's a really,
Sure.
really important point. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just, as we try, I think we need a universal model for after school programming, for example, so that every child has access to after school programming, regardless of their economic status. And they can, if their family can afford it, then they can pay an enrollment fee, and if they can't, then either there's a public program or there's a subsidized private program, but wherever they are, if there's 7 kids at Potomac Elementary, or if there's, 700 kids at Joanne Lelik, either way, they have access. That's all. I just want to make that very broad point.
Yeah. And can I just add one more thing to the table here? I totally agree. We want to make sure we're helping everyone wherever they are. One of the other things, having just spoke at the BCC or attended their annual foundation for their high school, it's one of the things I think we want to overlay, Robin, and figure out is they're doing great work in helping the kids that are in BCC that don't have access or can't afford the sport. They have programs that help do that. And so I think we want to factor in the community-based and other types of supports when we're doing the analysis, just so we can be as accurate as possible. But I totally agree with the sentiment from both my colleagues. So just wanted to mention that.
Exactly. That's a good example, right? I think we need to have an understanding of what those programs are. And at times we may seek to provide subsidized, enrollment for a private provider because that's the most efficient way, to help a group of kids. Okay, so
Great.
But important broad points. Thank you, Councilmember Joanna, for introducing that discussion. All right, continuing through.
Okay, so the next item for discussion is about the staffing in the Recreation Department, namely hiring freeze, vacancies, and lapse. So for fiscal year 22, the executive is recommending staffing consistent with the fiscal year 21 levels. That is 148 full-time positions, 11 part-time positions, and 490.09 FTEs. As you'll see, though, on page 3, there's a table of vacancies as of April 2021. The department is carrying a significant number of them, and as well as there is a hiring freeze in place, though council staff understands that some vacancies have been allowed to be filled. So in terms of lapse, the assumption for lapse is 88,000 in fiscal year 22. It's a decrease from the fiscal year 21 budgeted amount of $422,237. The projected unspent personnel costs, though, in fiscal year 21 is about 1.2 million, and the amount saved in fiscal year 20 was about $1 million. So because of this number of vacancies and the hiring freeze, there's no way that they're going to incur greater amounts in unspent personnel costs than what is budgeted in fiscal year 22. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But more importantly, I think that it would be good for the committee to discuss with the department the impact of these vacancies, as well as what they call this health status reports and challenges in recruiting seasonal staff on the services that they are hoping to deliver. And indeed, Action in Montgomery has been, I think, providing input to council members about the impact of these vacancies on the delivery of the Excel Beyond the Bell program and specifically.
Right. What is the status of the hiring freeze, and how will that be impacted by this year's budget?
I can answer that. The hiring freeze is still in place through this fiscal year. I would agree with Vivian. Everyone that we've asked for, which has not been a significant amount, I think we've asked for 4, have been approved. The other ones we did not really request an exemption for, simply because we were pivoting and doing different work. We weren't doing out of school time work. We weren't running community centers. We weren't operating senior centers. There didn't seem to be a critical need at that time to fill those vacancies. As things are getting better and improving and we're starting to restore services, summer camps are underway or planning for, we will start making the requests to fill some of those, because we know that the hiring process does take a bit of time to do, and a little bit challenging, especially in COVID times. But we anticipate starting to do that process very shortly so that we can anticipate being ready for out of school time, as well as opening our buildings to full capacity.
Okay, a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
How many of your community centers are presently being used, or your rec centers are presently being used for vaccinations or testing sites?
Yeah.
Or homeless facilities?
Yeah, that's a moving target. Primarily, it's around 4 to 6 on a regular basis. Wheaton, White Oak, Germantown, are used for testing and vaccine. Mid-County will start to be used for vaccine shortly. And Long Branch and Caulfield remain closed for homeless shelter work until the end of this calendar year. We anticipate having the shelter be relocated in late December, early January, and then we'll need some time to go in and do some cleaning and painting and repair work at those two sites.
And how many sites are not, how many other sites are there, and what is the timeline for reopening to provide service in those sites? And
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, Director Riley,
Yeah,
and Director Clutter, and Director Nice, and Ms. Anderson.
We currently have 8 buildings open for what we call fitness activities. So you can make an appointment, use our fitness room. We have classes and programs. We are transitioning back into more full operations. We have very limited space for summer camps this year. We have no access to public schools. So we're using our own rec centers, and we have some park buildings.
Pause you on that. Is that a conversation you're going to reconnect on based on new reopening models, or?
Maybe Adrian can speak to it. We've been trying to work with public schools to get back into the space, but understanding they have their own challenges and running, summer programs in their own space. We are working collaboratively with them to try to stand up some outdoor fun food fitness sites that are sort of wraparound after school ends. So students would go to school from 8:30 to 1, and then we would pick them up and run an outdoor activity from 1 to 6 at these same sites. Public schools would then help transport them home. I don't know if Adrian wants to jump in, but we have not had significant success in allowing public access, rec department, for full-scale summer camps.
Would you say that's because the school system at the moment is planning their own major program expansion, and so they're just not sure how to slot you in?
Yeah,
or is it just hesitancy about how many people can fit on a school ground this summer and so forth?
I think it's both. I think they're very much expanding their summer school programs this year as opposed to any other summer in the past at both middle school and elementary schools. But I think there are also concerns about capacity, getting too many people in the spaces. But we have not been able to get much traction there. Hopefully next summer we'll be back, but our capacity is probably less than a third of what we normally have for summer camps.
Well, I gotta say, I'm really worried about this. We should be at triple our normal capacity for summer camps, not 1/3. And let's hear what my colleagues have to say, but we got to find a path forward here. Councilmember Jawanda.
I was just going to say this, when we have the joint committee session, we should bring this up, being a member of both the committees. I think I want to find out a little more about what MCPS is planning. And I agree with you. We certainly shouldn't have, to take a PHED term, we should have no net loss of programs. And we should be having more. So we need to understand the universe, but I agree with the sentiment.
It's time for a surge, this summer, this is time for a surge in our supports. Councilman Friedson, and then.
If anything, this is what the federal money should be used for, is to fill the gaps. We know that the children who have been particularly in difficult environments, who are at hard hit communities, need services now more than ever. They have lacked services and supports over the last 15 months, and we should be doubling down to try to catch up their development. And camps and out of school programs are as much a part of their brain development as school is, particularly for the younger children. And so I add to the chorus of concern. I do think that this is a serious topic that we need to address. I don't think it's acceptable where we are right now. It's nobody's fault, but we have to work through these issues. And if it's a resource question, then that's something that we should be addressing during this budget, because this has got to be
absolute
priority. We can't control when the schools open and whether Wednesdays or virtual or in person. That's the school system's decision, but these are areas where we can help and support and make sure that they are at full capacity and that you're allowed to do it. I don't want to go off this topic, so if there's other conversation, I do have a couple questions about.
Can I just say one other comment
please,
on that?
Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so just Vivian, if we could make sure to bring this back up when we meet with the full group, and then Ms. Riley, if there are a list of that you have or can get sometime this, of what you're currently doing. You said about a third, just so we have a sense of
Sure.
what's happening.
Yeah, we have an inventory. We can send you a list.
At 11, we're going to be in the joint committee. So if you, and I believe you'll be there. So
Yeah.
if you could by then have a PowerPoint presentation. If you can walk through with a little more about the 1/3 expectation, just as a preview for my colleagues, I was going to propose, and I thought maybe we could make it a PHED recommendation to the joint committee. I don't know that we set aside or designate a significant amount of monies now from the ARPA funding for summer camp, and out of school time. I'm a little worried that we're going to come back in June to, ARPA funding planning, and by then we'll have missed the boat for summer. So, it seems to me we ought to start immediately saying that there's going to be a surge of funding available for summer camps. And, one way we could do that is through the Skills for the Future Fund that we have this committee created, it's a joint committee creation, at REC. And we could just add funding there for nonprofits, and at a minimum, that programming we can set aside a stable funding base, and let's figure out how REC, how we can boost REC and parks. Okay, Vivian.
Okay, so yes, and there.
Sorry, council members want additional comments. Andrew.
Yeah, I just, and I don't know if that was a response that I'm going to let it go. I did have a question specifically about the lapses. I appreciate you including.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
What is your understanding, Ms. Riley, of what the hiring freeze is? Because I continue to be concerned that, we have a hiring freeze, whatever that means, and we're adding a number of new positions in the budget, and there are people being hired in county government. I mean, there was a report and a notice back in the fall even about an administrative position in Department of Environmental Protection, somebody in animal services, a position in animal services, a warehouse position in alcohol beverage services. I mean, it's not clear to me that any of those, were core government necessities in the moment. So it's just not clear, what are you being told of who you can and you hire? I'm just curious as to what your understanding of what the guidance is that you're getting of what you're allowed to ask for and what you can't.
Yeah, if it addresses a critical need in infrastructure, or was something that you needed to continue continuity of operations to run your programs and services, or if it was related to COVID work. That was sort of my understanding of what the freeze was. And so we have been doing that in some cases. Like, we've been running pools since last July. So we asked for we had a couple people leave. And so we were able to fill those, ask for an exemption and fill those. We had an IT position that was vacant, and with everyone working in a remote capacity, it was a critical need for us to fill that position. Those were also approved. So we've had no barriers. We've always had them approved, but it was the process and making sure that it met a critical infrastructure need or was around COVID support work.
Appreciate that. I would just note for council staff, I mean, it doesn't seem very equitable across county government of how this is being applied. I don't think there's a lot of clarity of what is and what isn't part of the hiring freeze. So just perhaps something as we continue to move forward, if this hiring freeze remains, that we keep an eye on it, or if new hiring freezes come down, that just something for us to keep an eye on, because it doesn't seem clear to me that every director has the same guidance, the same understanding, and is applying the hiring freeze in the same way. And in that case, we shouldn't have a hiring freeze, because we're budgeting these positions and these services because we think the residents need them. If they weren't important, we shouldn't have them in the budget. So anyway, I just wanted to take that down. Thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, continuing.
So, the discussion about adding funding to support youth programming, summer camps, after school programming, council staff wants to make sure that we're clear that, does the department have the capacity to use that funding in order to deliver these services. And that's why we've brought up, the staffing issues related to, hiring freeze and the HSRs.
That's helpful. Thank you, David. So can you explain, or who can explain, what is the relationship in this hiring freeze and the budget? I mean, I suppose, is this hiring freeze already factored into our end of year balance for FY21? And that's why it's continuing? I mean, if we're budgeting for these positions, why can't we proceed with hiring them? I don't,
I'm not sure.
who from OMB can, or who can share?
Anita can answer that question for you.
Good morning, Ms. RTA. You're on mute.
Of course, I'm on mute. Good morning. I could try to shed some light. So the hiring freeze is in place. We had a very tough budget season. We're still in a very tough fiscal situation. So usually when we have that situation, we have some sort of hiring freeze, and we are able to fill vacancies for, as Ms. Riley said, for critical positions. And as far as recreation is concerned, we filled all of the requests that they have put forward to OMB.
I see. So please continue.
Okay, so while the positions were budgeted for, in tough fiscal times, we do try to not limit, but to make sure that positions that are vacant, where department personnel are able to cover some of those responsibilities, we look at those positions, and then we make sure that the requests are really...
It's okay, I got it. I mean, I understand why we do the hiring freezes, and it's an important tool to keep a lid on things when we're in tough times, so 100%. Mm-hmm. I think the question now is, can we provide some policy direction here that we want a surge of programming in after-school programming and camps for the summer and fall, and request that OMB release funding to make that possible at REC? I think that's kind of the broader issue. Vivian, would you say that's sort of what you're raising here?
Absolutely, but it's also, does REC have the capacity in terms of, are they able to attract enough seasonal staff? Are the HSRs, which are, there's 17 front-facing recreation positions that have been given, this HSR so that they can telework, because they are a family member at high risk of getting, suffering complications from COVID. So there's a number of different factors for the department that's potentially limiting their capacity to deliver service. And that's what I think that Ms. Riley could maybe speak to, is if there's additional funding, can they step it up, or do these factors limit what they do?
Robin.
So a lot of our, as you know, most of our staff have been detailed and been working in other capacities. They've been doing testing, vaccine sites, 311, food access, lots of different places. We're starting to pull them back. Actually, next Friday will be their last day doing that work, and they'll be coming back to us full time. So we are behind in terms of recruiting our seasonal staff and finding. We have started that process to call all of our seasonals who have worked for us in the previous lifetime, and making connections with them as to whether they're still interested in employment, they still want to come back to work, they feel safe to do it. So we're just starting that work. A lot of our capacity is also limited by space. So we could bring a whole bunch of people back, but if we don't have space for camp, we won't need them. We're doing a lot outdoors. We're even using senior centers for summer camp. And so it's kind of like building the plane while you're flying it. That's what we've been trying to do. We are just starting to get boots on the ground back into rec work, and not COVID work. So it has been challenging. I think Adrian is in charge of our programming and our camps. I think once we get folks back in the next week or so, we can do a massive push to hire seasonals. We are limited by our current vacancies, we are limited. 4 of our 6 senior center directors cannot do front-facing work. We have about, I think, 8 or so other that are center staff that work at rec centers. Damascus, as an example, we have a vacancy there, and the center director is on an HSR. She can't do front-facing work.
Is there no other director that you sub in during that time?
We only have either 1 or 1.5. Some places 2 career employees at every building. So we could
have 1 or 2.
We could move Morris Buster, who's from Long Branch, to Damascus, but he too is on an HSR.
What is the HSR again?
It means they're high risk. They can't do front-facing work. They themselves have a health issue, or their family member does, so they can not do any front-facing work at this time. They can only do remote or telework.
Health status report, right?
Sorry?
Health status report.
Health status report, yeah.
Yes. So, with vaccines becoming more prevalent and...
That was the question I was going to ask. I mean, does that apply once you've been vaccinated?
It does at this time. Until they're lifted from the HSR, they can't do front-facing work. I don't work for OHR or occupational medical.
Vaccinations don't affect... As far as HSR status is concerned, at this point, vaccinations are not a factor.
Correct.
So,
but perhaps the committee may want to provide input on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have some medical, opinion here that's guiding this. Where's Dr. Gales on this?
Good. Yeah, I want to chime in, but Andrew can go first.
Please. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so thank you. So, this is a really important conversation. I think it has broader implications across county government, frankly, and I don't think it's fair to an extent to ask Ms. Riley to weigh in on it, since she's here carrying out orders and can only do
facts. We're getting facts.
Permitted to do, and which I appreciate. I think you're doing absolutely everything that you can within the confines that you're working, which is a difficult environment. I do think so. I think two conversations. One, this broader countywide conversation. It's true of libraries. The library lead is going to speak. It's true of rec. It's just true of all services. We've got to figure this question out. I know that there are health and HIPAA sensitivities and all kinds of other questions, emergency use authorization and what the legal opportunities are, constraints are there. We got to work through that. That's really important. We also don't even know how many of our employees, at least I don't, are not getting a vaccine. What percentage of the workforce has been offered and has chosen not to get a vaccine, and obviously then why. But it would be helpful to also know how many people are on HSRs, just to know what the not the names but the numbers by department. So maybe that's information that we can get. But I do think it would be helpful in the context of this conversation, going back to where we are, given all of those things, how much money and what programs could we actually implement? I mean, I think if we're talking about adding ARPA money, if we're talking about what we're doing in this budget, what could you do realistically? Because we don't want to appropriate money or fence off money that can't be deployed. I mean, that doesn't serve kids, which is what our goal here. That doesn't help seniors in social isolation who need access to services. So do you have a sense of what you could do given the constraints that you have now, if the committee were able to make a recommendation to our council colleagues?
Adrian, do you want to?
What programs would be priorities? What you think realistically you could get back on online for the summer? How we could fulfill this within the realistic constraints that you currently have.
I don't know if Adrian wants to jump in.
Yeah, I certainly will. I would go back to the space issue. That's going to be our number one barrier, which will determine what we can do. I mean, I'd say space, and then we're currently taking stock of our seasonal staff, as Robin mentioned. But that's going to be the barrier for not just the recreation department, for other service providers as well, other municipalities. All of us relied heavily on the use of the school system. And the additional component to that was that planning for summer, takes place months and months in advance. And so families can register early. And so families now, I think there will be families that are still looking for options. And so we're working heavily with the school system as they try to figure out their summer school operation to see what services we could potentially wrap around that summer school. So could we bring maybe it's not a full-blown camp that, runs by Code of Maryland regulations and that aspect, but can we bring some opportunity to wrap around summer school? And, we're working with them. I think they're working to try to figure out summer as they're behind, as they just figured out how to bring kids back to school. So it's really been challenging. I know we're not the only ones that have been affected by the space situation. And so I would say for not only for the recreation department, I know I'm being a little bit vague here and I apologize, but I think for many of us, we're, as things continue to change and open up, we're quickly shifting gears and trying to do what we can as fast as we can.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. We've been working really closely with Dr. Stoddard and Dr. Gale from months and months ago about planning for summer camp and what that looked like. And they offered us some guidance and advice around keeping the numbers small. And then as things got better, we could keep a wait list and add that as things got. And so that's exactly what we're planning to do. And we know
now, I don't mean to interrupt you, but now there are no more, there will not be limits unless something really unexpected happens, with outdoor programs.
Right. We just, Adrian and I just spoke with us yesterday after your announcement yesterday, that we need to get moving faster because now our capacity is definitely growing. And the other piece of this component
is. Do we have
is
facilities currently for that capacity? I mean,
we can add capacity.
We got a lot of incongruent things going on here,
Yeah,
unfortunately. Greater need, not a lot of space.
Sure. Well, we just don't have additional spaces. So as an example, at Praise and Rec Center, as an example, our current capacity was like 35 based on the old COVID regulations. Now we can ramp that up and pull more numbers in. The same at all of our sites, East County. We can add capacity at our existing spaces, but they still have to stay in their pods, their groups. So we need spaces for each of those subgroups. So that's a factor as well. As we get more seasonals on and we get closer to that ability to reach out and connect with them, we can add additional space by opening up buildings that we currently don't have a center director for because of an HSR. As an example, Wisconsin Place or let's see, Scotland. We have some others like that we can add back, but only use seasonals just to run them. Because we don't have the capacity with career to cover all of those spaces. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with the space that you have,
we can grow our capacity.
You can grow your capacity, but only to a certain extent.
Correct, because of the pods and the hubs, the groups.
So I'm going to throw two things out there, and I'm going to turn to Councilmember Joanna because I've been talking for a while. So number one. Has there been any consideration, or this is a comment and a question, any consideration to working with community-based partners, faith-based institutions, other places with large facilities who have been at the forefront of this crisis, who have stepped up, who have changed what they've offered, have changed what they do? Have there been any conversations with that since MCPS has been a bit of a moving target to understand what you can and can't do there?
Yeah, Adrian, I think your group reached out to some faith-based groups to see if we could find space, correct? A program team?
Yeah, we have, and we actually have a walkthrough with one of our local churches coming up. It's either this week or next week at Millian Methodist Church in the Aspen Hill area, which they've been a great community partner in the past. I know that we had early on tried to connect with I'm going to forget the name of the church, but a big church down near the Burnt Mills area. Unfortunately, they had lost their pastor to COVID, and so that limited what they felt safe to do. Parks has been very supportive. We are in a number of park activity buildings where we know the building itself is really small, but we're offering outdoor camps where we have a place that we can shelter in place in the event of an emergency. And so we're in unique places this year, like Lake Needwood and out at the park at South Germantown. And so we're continuing to look at as many locations as we can.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Jawanda has been working closely with churches on the food recovery piece. I have a number of relationships with the faith-based organizations. So if we can help in any way, deploy us to reach out to faith-based organizations. If there's a particular area of the county that you're looking, we can think through who has relationships that we can connect you with. I think these organizations are looking desperately for opportunities to serve, to fulfill their mission, and to step up in a time of crisis to support the community. They've done it, and they just are waiting to be asked for the right next opportunity. So if you have one, do it. The comment is, I do think on the schools piece, this is crying out for the county executive to sit down with the superintendent and work this out. And we're going to talk about it as a committee, a joint committee later, but I do think that there's needs to be some more executive leadership on both sides to sort through these issues. They're complicated, they're challenging. I'm not denying that, but we got to work this out. So. Sorry.
I certainly appreciate that, and we will. Fun Food Fitness is a great model to go into faith-based organizations, and so, and I do know where I can't speak on behalf of some of the other municipalities for sure. I understand they're certainly in the same position and have to looked at senior centers and every location they can for putting in summer programming.
Councilmember Jawanda.
Yeah, totally agree. Appreciate all those comments and responses by Councilman Friedson and by the rec team. Just to put a finer point on it, we have to get and we talked about this earlier, we need a sense of, from you and MCPS, what is going to happen? What are the amount of programs? So, for example, Ms. Clutter, you said these picking up these on the back end of MCPS programs. How many are we talking about? Is it, do you have a sense of that?
Oh, right now we have firmed up 8 locations, and we're still looking at taking stock again of our staff, what other buildings are becoming available, and that's working with the school administrator at each of those school locations. And so we have had principals reach out to us asking for the recreation department to support them, and so we're kind of working on a school by school level. And we'll continue to examine what other services we might be able to overlay, but a lot of that will depend on MCPS.
Right. So I think we need to know. There's a couple like intersecting points here. Like, okay, folks reach out, and then you build these 8 programs, but then if you had, how many could you do with your current restraints? So that we need to know what the total number is. Realizing there's multiple factors. There's your staffing, there's the space, but assuming you could find the space, let's start there. Just on your staffing, how many could you, and I don't expect you to answer this right this second unless you can, but we need to know that number. What could you do? And then if we gave you additional money, what could you do? And then at the same time, we need to be asking MCPS and others, community-based partners, to Councilman Friedson's point, that have space that there could be a temporary agreement, or you could use the space. What are the places we could do it? So it just needs this big coordinated plan, and we've got to get it done in the next 4 weeks, or whatever.
Yeah,
if possible.
So to that point, I mean, can we? Because we got to get done the next 4 weeks, because we need it to be clear in this budget, so that everyone can move forward with certainty. So can we have a ballpark? Can we have a surge plan and a ballpark budget amount? Like on Tuesday.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, as soon as possible. I think if you do it in this budget, you have all the planning, all the programs done. But yeah, so we can include it in, and with MCPSU and community partners, I think Collaboration Council should be a part of this discussion. There's a lot of people.
No, to your point, Councilmember Jawanda, we had a really hearty discussion yesterday with the Children's Opportunity Fund about standing up the equity hubs and making that part of the summer piece too. And we collaborate with a lot of community partners and figure this out. So it's very much an echo of what we talked about yesterday.
Okay, Great. So I know, so we're all on the same page. I just think you hear the desire from all of us to, and I know all of our colleagues would agree, I can't imagine, that we want to give some money, but to Councilman Friesen's point, we don't want to do it if they can't be used and it's not going to help kids. So we want to have a sense of what's possible first.
Yeah.
So to that point, I think we'll take this up with the Joint Committee, but I think it's important for us to set aside funding for nonprofit partners who frankly just don't have the same constraints and can more nimbly operate programs out of unconventional spaces and have clearer guidelines now and don't have HSRs and so forth. So, we ought to set aside funding specifically for that, but can we, and we should also, we know that MCPS has a fair amount of funding to work with for the summer and the fall, and how that will be allocated, that's still to be determined. So we don't need to budget for things that MCPS would budget for or will budget for all the same. I think the value, particularly of our new health framework, is it provides a roadmap forward. And so we can stop saying we don't know, but we can say we're pretty sure, and move forward on that basis. And so, with that clarity, can we get a more of a surge plan, whatever piece is necessary for rec, and get it done within this budget? And it could be ARPA funded. This doesn't have to be the base budget. It shouldn't be really, but we could tie that down now to enable everyone to move forward. Vivian, you look like you want to talk, and then Councilmember Friesen.
Oh, no, I'm
Okay.
just nodding.
Okay, nodding your enthusiasm. All right.
Yeah, I just want to hone in on one thing that you said. I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's been a really productive and important conversation. I look forward to us coming to a resolution on it and figuring out how to operationalize it. We'll figure out the space piece. That's important. But if the space piece was worked out, what does the money piece and resource piece need to be? And what is your staffing capability realistically? I think that's really, really important. But Chair's point, I just wanted to hone in on very quickly. This question of other organizations that are providing camps that may not have the same limitations and may have capacity. We may think about, as part of this conversation, I think the rec programs and public programs should be our priority. But if there is a cap and a limit, and it's resource and staffing and facilities based, we may want to think about, as part of this effort, of some type of grant program for private camps to provide free or subsidized access to community members. I throw that out there to say that the goal is to get kids into programs that support their development and their mental health and their physical and mental needs. So that's what you were hinting at. I just wanted to
let me
I just wanted to throw that into the
thank you.
mix as we follow up on this conversation. I don't want to take away from rec. That should be the primary part of the conversation, but we should complement it and fill in any remaining need with other private nonprofit partners. I mean, there's churches, there's synagogues, there's ethnic community centers that are providing services to communities that we could potentially leverage and provide access to more kids who have significant needs.
So in the Joint Committee, I was going to recommend that we add $2.5 million with ARPA funding to the Skills for the Future Fund, which would be intended for nonprofits to provide camps and services. I thought that would be more appropriate to bring up in that context as we created that fund, in the Joint Committee, and it's historically anyway, it had a strong school site basis. So it's programming in the schools. It's a little unclear at this point whether that is truly the hook, but I guess I would just ask my colleagues, what do you think we ought to do? Should we put forward a fund now for rec that is, an additional fund that nonprofits can then, and camp providers can then apply and, be able to expand their programs and reduce their tuition and so on and so forth, recognizing that rec may have its own channel, in addition. So let's see what colleagues say. Why don't you start with you, Will?
Yeah, I think the answer is probably from me. I just want to know the answers to some of these questions first. I need to know what MCPS is going to do with its almost $300 million. Like, what are they putting in in what capacity will that expand, and how many kids will it reach? Rec's going to get back to us, as Mrs. Clutter and Ms. Riley said, on what are they currently doing, how many, and what could their capacity could be. And then I think we want to max out those two, right? Maximize MCPS, understand Rec's full capacity, maximize that, and then we'll know the number. I think it's impossible almost to know the number of what it would be until we have a little more info. So, but I'm open to that. Yeah.
Good response. So what's the timeline here? Vivian, like in relation to the overall budget timeline that we're in, can we come back next Friday or something like that, to set a deadline for our partners and everyone to work. So that, what's our deadline to get something set for this budget? I think that's probably the ultimate key question.
So there is some time. I believe there's some committee meetings scheduled the first week of May that we could come back to. I'm looking at the schedule, and I think that May 7th is what I see. So I'm not sure if we're scheduling after that.
And truly, we don't have to actually finalize the budget until May 31st. I think we probably are trying to aim for a faster resolution, but we could, we'll be taking this up again at 11, but
we need to talk about it there.
Yeah.
We talk about it then, but I think a general idea, it seems like we're heading towards is let's set a date for a May, kind of big conversation about all these programs and ask everybody to get as ready as they can for that with some plans and some ideas. And then we can add funding as we see, is identified a path for it, and we can have it done in this budget cycle. And it's presumably, it's ARPA funding.
Okay.
Well, that clears things up for me a lot. I appreciate that. All right.
So moving forward, we get to one of the adjustments that the executive is recommending. It's a one-time seasonal staff savings from delayed opening of facilities due to COVID, and it's amount of $520,000. The executive staff reports that this is likely to result from limitations in the provision of summer camp programs and anticipated COVID-19 related delays in fully opening facilities. The council did receive testimony from a couple of different constituents expressing concern about that. And the committee has been just talking about whether, to what extent these different staffing issues are a limiting factor. There certainly is a greater demand for these kinds of services, but at this point, it sounds like we don't know exactly whether these, whether these challenges can be rectified or to be minimized.
Well, we think that by June, we're likely to be in a scenario where there are, these indoor limits are even lifted, and there may be masking, but there may not be 6 feet distancing. So how, what would be the basis in what seems like the most likely framework, scenario based on our new framework? What would be the basis to say we're not going to be able to operate programs there? I think that is no longer an operating assumption, So I don't think we should take savings based on, anticipated closures that we don't anticipate.
How much? What was the amount again, Julian?
$520,000.
So that's back in the base. That's basically a savings that was taken. That's where you get the 0.7%, I suppose, or a piece of it.
Part of it, it's puts and takes. I think there's increases in certain kinds of,
right,
compensation and whatever.
That's a savings.
Sorry.
Andrew, and then Ms. Arguete.
Thank you.
Well, I think this is directly tied to the last conversation. I think we need the same conversation, and perhaps this is a comeback item as well. But listen, we shouldn't be appropriating money for things that we know aren't going to be able to be spent. I mean, that's just bad service to the community. That is not helpful to the rec department, unfair to them, because it will make them look bad and put them in a position to fail when they have no opportunity to succeed. And that's not something that I'd be interested in doing. Having said that, the idea that we're going to add money to ramp up seasonal staffing for summer programs, but then take a $500,000 cut here because of an inability based on a limited number of access to facilities to hire seasonal staff doesn't line up. So I think we got to merge these two conversations. Let's find out, is the last conversation rather than ARPA just rejecting this, part of or all of this reduction? Is it taking the reduction but doing ARPA because, it only should be one time? I'm not sure what the answer is. I think that really is up to the rec department to come back to us. But we can't have this conversation and the other conversation separately. We have to have them together because they really are highlighting a similar dynamic. But I think what you're hearing loud and clear from all of us from the last conversation and this conversation is we want programs to serve kids. We want them now. We want to do everything that we possibly can to put you in a position to be able to do that. We're willing to be creative. We're willing to try new things. We're willing to change the way that the budget is set up in order to put you in a position to do that. But we need to know from you of what that looks like, how much is realistic, and what we can actually accomplish here together. But this is, at least from my perspective, very collaborative effort with you to tell us, here's what we would like to see. What are you capable of doing to make that happen, which I know you'd like to do too, if you could.
Yep.
Yes. So this is so interesting. I just like my mind is sort of buzzing right now with the kind of paradigmatic shift from no we can't to yes we can, and like that's where we are right now. We're at that inflection point. We got to move now. So the specific issue to your point is, should we claim savings from anticipated closures? Essentially, I would say we shouldn't plan to claim those savings. I agree that we ought to make sure that's the right approach based on a final, decision. But if we don't undo this claimed savings, then we'll have to, how do these things, can we use ARPA money? I mean, that might be clever. I don't know, to use ARPA money rather than base budget money. I'm sort of unclear right now. Vivian, can you talk about how these things could mesh? If do you have, what's your recommendation here, I guess?
Well, I think it does make sense to come back to this item in that, I don't think we've gotten a clear sense the capacity what the department can do. And I think hearing from the department, what is it, can these funds be fully spent out? Can they spend out ARPA funds? Now, I'm not sure that we could use ARPA to supplant funding. And so I'm not sure exactly, and perhaps Ms. Ariti or Ms. Riley can talk about, what these specific seasonal funds are targeted for. So if they are not for, standing up increased summer programming, because that's related to COVID, then perhaps, ARPA could be used to do that. And perhaps these funds, may be relevant to just how we open up centers, and maybe centers aren't going to be available because of still requirements for homeless sheltering, et cetera, right? So, I could see that there might be an argument that we could fashion, depending on what the circumstances are, for ARPA funding as opposed to county funding in the base budget. But I think that this needs to be teased out a little bit more.
So what's the will of the body? Would you prefer that we don't claim these savings and highlight that for our colleagues? That would be, I think, the safest approach in a sense. But if we do claim the savings, then we have to add that funding back through ARPA, or we have to add it back. Otherwise, they won't have operating budget, I think, to provide programming. So
Yeah, could we wait and could we just
Yeah.
wait till we get the response and
I
then?
think we can. Yeah, I think we can
I
definitely
just don't
wait.
think you can have this conversation
That's-
separate from the previous
Right.
conversation. So just a couple comments. So I think we should wait. I agree with Councilmember Jawando. I think they're intrinsically linked, and the idea would be adding a bunch of money to something almost identical and then cutting, accepting, lapses and savings here just, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I do think a couple things on the ARPA funds. Number one, if this is going to be in the base budget, and we're just basically lapsing it, then that is really not an appropriate use of ARPA funding. If you cut it from the budget and then did this as a one-time enhancement, to meet the surge, that would be different. So we have to think through how we are actually doing that. I'd be more comfortable just saying we should put this back in the base budget. There's no reason why we should be reducing services at a time when there's greater need, and that's the baseline that we're going to start in fiscal year 23. We can't really have our cake and eat it too. That's number one. Number two, I also think we have to be careful with how we talk about ARPA funding, because the money's already been committed. So unless we're making significant cuts to what the county executive has proposed in his recommended budget, there is no ARPA funding that's available now. We're overcommitted to the tune of, I think now we're basically over 130 million in the enhancements that the county executive, sent over. So I'm not saying that to be critical. I'm just saying that to be sober and serious and honest, that there is not a pot of money that we're sitting on figuring out how to deploy to best serve our residents. We are overcommitted on the amount of money that we're going to have, in the next few weeks when the first tranche of ARPA money comes. We're going to get 101.7 million based on what the county executives already proposed without us putting a nickel of additional things on the list that we're going to have to discuss. We're over 130 million. So we're in the hole, like $30 million right now. So I just wanted to note that. Now, we don't have to accept anything that the county executive has recommended. It's just a recommendation, and ultimately the county council is the one that makes budget decisions, it's the entity that makes ultimate budget decisions. But I just wanted to note that it's not as if there is,
That's a good point.
and I'm not happy with the way that process has occurred. I think it should have been more collaborative. I made that comment, but I'm not going to reiterate it here. But I just did think it was important in the context of, as we talk about, just throwing things onto the ARPA list. I think that is very risky, and I think it's a much more appropriate thing to do for fiscal reasons and for our intentions of actually making this happen, to talk through whether or not it's appropriate to take this lapse, given what the committee and the council's clear intentions are for the department to move forward with providing these services at a time when our young people need them more than ever.
Okay, that's a good point. The remaining chunk of ARPA funds may not come in FY22. I guess we know we have more coming. It's just we're not sure when.
Yeah, just to clarify, they will come in FY22, but they're expected to come, based on current guidance, from my understanding, about this time next year, late April, early to mid-May next year. So they may not be available for most of the fiscal year, I think is the best way to think about it.
Okay, so I guess my broad comment about that is that, it's less. That's something we can work with. With certainty, knowing that it's coming is the crucial element. But you're making good points here. Thanks. All right, we have 10 minutes, I think, to get through the rest of this packet and then turn to the ECD item. So, any additional? And then Vivian, where are we here? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's just a quick thing on senior services. The program there's a decrease of $19,890, which is all due to multi-program adjustments for that. And Council staff just wanted to raise that the governor issued an executive order that allows senior centers to reopen on April 30th. I know that Recreation has been thinking about the use of those senior centers, and I didn't know if the committee wanted to just hear some of those thoughts about the department's thinking and opening those kinds of in-person services for seniors.
Let's hear from the department, and I would like to propose that we add some funding for a surge of senior center support. I'm very concerned. It's been a year or more since our residents in this demographic have had a chance to really have programming, and we got to be aggressive here as well, just as we need with our youth. I think our seniors who are facing isolation, this is a time, and they're vaccinated, so it's safe. Okay, let's hear from the department.
Okay. And I'll try to be speedy about it. So again, the governor's announcement kind of caught us off guard. We had plans really not to open senior centers until the fall.
Why would you do that when we know that seniors have been vaccinated since like February?
Well, just because not everyone has to get vaccinated, and being able to staff it when you have staff deployed at other places and doing other work, and HSRs, we were very limited in our capacities to do it. So we are currently working really hard behind the scenes right now to do what we can to relocate those camps that are in those two buildings and get them into other spaces nearby. One option is our old office building at Bushy Drive, to run a camp out of that space. So we're working behind the scenes and really working hard to get a few of our sites open. Just don't have a timeline or a date yet. We're still working with HHS on the congregate meals and the bus transportation and doing that safely, and sort of developing a plan on what the capacities are on the bus and getting people there. So we should have more information in the next couple weeks on that.
I gotta say, I just feel like these rules that have been put into place are killing us. They are hampering our community's recovery from COVID. Our executive branch, I'm not blaming Rec. This is not directed at you. We need our county executive to show some leadership, get to the table with our bargaining units, and clear the way for the government to provide response to the community. That's what we're here for. These are essential services.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to give a quick shout out though, because even though we've been closed, we have done a tremendous amount of work.
Your team has been a frontline response.
We have been delivering senior meals from the day one.
I know you have.
We've been doing remote classes. We have a bone builders class with 200 in a Zoom world.
You guys are crushing it. I'm not saying otherwise. You're deploying your resources fully, but now it's time to restore the core services that our community needs as well. So. Comments, Councilmember Joanna.
Yeah, I want to just give you another pat on the back, Director Riley and your team. I know I've seen you. I've been there. We've been day one when the first White Oak food distribution we did over a year ago, and you were there. I remember calling you and saying, "Hey, how can you guys get involved?" And your staff has been there. It wasn't just you. You helped us with translation. You've been feeding seniors. You've been doing a ton, and I want to acknowledge that. I will bring up the point, libraries has been mentioned a lot, and as lead for libraries, they're working furiously to try to open. And I just want to acknowledge the limits of the collective bargaining process. We talked a little bit about this with the HSEs. Is it HSEs or HSRs? I don't know, whatever. HSRs. This is complicated and it's unprecedented. When you have in the case of libraries, our workforce is already mostly seniors in the county government. The libraries is even more so. It's just really hard to get. And I think one of the things we need to do is coming out. As I was saying, it's really hard to get agreement. We need to review our HR, policies and how these things work going forward. You heard it in the rec context. How it's limiting potentially our ability to provide programming. And so I know it's not for lack of wanting to do it. I don't think on anyone's side. I think we all want things open. But it's just underscoring that I think, as a county, we're going to need to review this. This has been difficult for many, many people. And so I just wanted to give you a shout out and acknowledge that. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just an unprecedented situation. But that being said, we do need to figure it out, particularly in this context, so that we can provide these critical services.
Once our employees have been fully vaccinated, full immunity, or been invited to that, I don't know what argument there is to no longer provide services unless they have an acute medical condition that a doctor says you can't do this. That makes sense. But otherwise, we got to be providing services to the community. That's why we're here. Andrew.
Yeah, agree with both points. I think, and both can be true. The rec department has been incredible. I mean, I have seen personnel, leadership, literally every level of employee. Not that there's a hierarchy, but all hands on deck at all kinds of different crisis responses. I've seen it at the testing sites. I've seen it at the food distribution sites. I mean, it has been truly a department that has turned around what it does in the midst of a crisis. I think it's one of the best examples that we have in county government of actually being agile and redeploying personnel and resources to meet the moment and serve the community in a time of crisis. And you deserve a tremendous amount of credit for that. I think it's a credit to your leadership and the management of the department that it's been able to do that. I think it's been better in rec than it has been in just about any other department. I just want to make sure that I noted that. I do agree, though, that it's unfair to you and to your team to continue to do that and to not be able to provide the services that you signed up for and that residents need. And you are in the programming business, and we got to get back to providing programming and services to kids and to seniors. And that's not a criticism, that's a statement of fairness to you. You're not an emergency response professional. We'll leave that to Dr. Stoddard and his team. You're in the programming business, and I want to get you, and I know all of us want to get you all back to doing what we know you're great at and what we know our residents really need from you. And I just think that we need to move in that direction. I did have a question here. I don't quite understand. If we weren't going to open the senior facilities until the fall, that was the plan in the budget as submitted, the $19,890 savings, which from my understanding just comes from basically multi-program adjustments. How does that jive? Was it just that these folks were being, these programs were being redeployed elsewhere, and so there's no saving? Because I'd love to say we're not going to accept this cut too, or at least explore whether or not it's possible to not accept this lapse in this cut, because we want the senior programs to come online sooner, just like we want the children's program to come on sooner. But there is no lapse.
Sure.
Here. There's no proposed cut.
If you dive deep into our senior program budgets, we don't have a significant amount of operating money in those facilities to cut. Most of the programming that we do, we rely really with a lot of depth on our community partners and volunteers to run programming. So it's not like we're paying for a lot of opportunities. So we didn't have a lot to cut. And so that's why we didn't offer up a reduction in terms of senior programs, just because there's not a lot there to begin with. And we knew when we came back, we wanted to be able to your point, add more robust programming.
Got it. Well, that makes it even easier because it's not a resource issue necessarily. So we've got to figure out a way to get these programs up and running. So thank you for all you've done, for all you're doing, and let's get you back to doing what you're good at, what you want to do, what you signed up to do, and what you've spent a career dedicating yourselves to doing. But I'm glad that it's not a resource issue, so we've got to sort the rest of it out and get these programs up and running.
So in other words, if we were to add funding, that wouldn't really help?
Oh, of course it would help. I mean, we relied very heavily on community partners to deliver services. So White Oak Rec Center, as an example, the senior center there, when we get it back from a vaccine site on an annual basis, I think their operating budget to provide contractors, entertainers, arts and crafts supplies is, I think, around $10,000. It's not a lot of money. So we've done great leveraging resources with volunteers and community partners to be able to deliver services.
Colleagues, any interest in adding $250,000 for senior programs for our surge?
Are you going to be able to use $250,000? I mean, I was thinking more like the $19,890 that is being cut, since $10,000 is the number that you mentioned.
That's one site, though.
For one facility, but how much money could you realistically use, and will that be the difference and being able to provide a program versus not provide a program. I don't want to just throw money at it because we support it. But we all do support it. So realistically, what's the amount of money that you could use that would be the difference between you opening a program versus not opening a program, or lots of them? Because I think we'd like to see them all over the county.
Adrian, do you want to jump in? This is Adrian's division.
Yeah, no, certainly. First comment I want to make about the reopening is one of the challenges that we had was all the indication by the state was that they would not allow senior centers to reopen until the state of emergency was lifted. So when we were trying for our advanced planning and with our challenges of space in summer, that's how we landed with utilizing the buildings for summer camp. But I might add that the programming, to Robin's point, never stopped. In the fall, we were maxing out like parking lots with Tai Chi classes and as much as we could do. And so we're certainly, our community members are reaching out. We've held a number of listening sessions, and they are desperate to get back out and make the social connection and get active. We certainly have seen the toll that it's taken on many of our 55 or better residents. And so we want to bring some of that programming back. And to Robin's point, we've relied so heavily on volunteers, which I'm proud of the fact that we've leveraged our partnerships to the max, working with our senior community. We haven't had a lot of succession planning though, or what happens when our volunteers, if they can't support that, if they aren't able to pay for the instructors that we relied on. So I certainly think in this area, I would love to see us add, more robust programming as we go through. Now we are a little bit space challenged, as one of our senior centers is a homeless shelter. Another one is one of our largest vaccine sites. But we're quickly looking to see how we can shift our camp programs to other locations, as Robin mentioned, so we can bring back as many of the services that our seniors have come to love. And I would love to see us be able to offer more as well.
So would you like to come back to us, as a follow-up as soon as you can? It's Wednesday. Can you spend a couple days and come back to us with a budget? And we could, the committee could consider a different recommendation to the council.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so the next items are the amendments to the CIP for recreation. These should be pretty quick. They're not controversial. The first one is for the MLK Indoor Swim Center renovation. The total project costs remain the same. There is the acceleration of design work from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 21, and then construction scheduled from winter 2021 through fiscal year 24. Executive staff reports that the work on the facility is substantially complete with the exception of the pool deck. Okay. The next.
And if anyone has a comment or question, we'll raise that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Saying please keep moving.
Okay, sorry. The next item is for the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center Building Envelope Improvement Project. The appropriation request, there's a slight increase to correct a technical problem of $553,000. The fiscal year 22 appropriation request is $18,954,000. There has been a delay to the project schedule for affordability purposes. Its design is now scheduled to begin in late fiscal year 22 with construction scheduled to start in fiscal year 23. But Recreation has suggested that this delay allows time to complete the South County Regional Recreation and Aquatic Center that will then limit the impact when KSAC is closed for repairs. Okay, and then the last item is the shared agency booking system replacement. The recommended source of funding is current revenue as well as other governmental transfers, namely the Park Enterprise Fund. The appropriation request is actually a negative $677,000, and basically the decrease in the project is a result of a lower than anticipated bid. So this is, a good thing. And that's the last of the recommended amendments.
Great, thank you. Any comments on these? Otherwise, we'll take them without objection. All right, without objection. Ms. Arite.
Thank you. I just wanted to say the last point with the shared agency booking system. I believe when you had the discussion with CUF, there was some question about the fund balance, and part of the savings will go towards helping the CUF fund balance. And also wanted to say the previous discussion about senior centers, the CE did not cut the seniors budget. It's just technical puts and takes for retirement, etc. So just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, so the 677,000, most of that is going to the CUP fund balance, just to clarify the number for the record.
Yes, so the amount that's going to CUF is 677 minus 290, which I believe is 3. I'm doing this on the fly.
387.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that will help the fund balance a little.
Where's the 290 going?
It's going to Park and Planning Enterprise Fund. The project is funded.
It's being split. It's basically being split to the enterprise.
Yes.
Funds. Okay,
and
great.
CUF. Mhm.
That was going to be my next question about what about the enterprise fund. So you answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. All right, great. We have recommendations. We have some follow-up to be continued. Thank you to the team. I know you've been working overtime 100-fold and delivering critical services to the community through this crisis. It's always amazing to see what a group of creative and innovative people can do, and that's you. So thank you. We're grateful for your service. And thank you to all our budget analysts. All right, so that wraps this up. But it's a continued item. So thank you.
Yep.
Let's
Thanks.
move on to the next. All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Now, turning to Gene Smith, and we have follow-up on the MCEDC NDA. So we're going to dive back into that, and I have a couple of suggestions or ideas from my colleagues here. So we are joined by Ben Wu, CEO, Robbie Brewer, Chair, Stacy Minot, Deputy Director, I believe, Chief Operating.
Vice President for Operations.
Thank you. And Mr. Fletcher and Bill Tompkins. Okay, great. Good. Gene, catch us up.
Sure. The PHED committee met on April 22nd last week to look at several economic development budgets, including the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation's budget. During that time, it was requested that MCDC return and discuss a few items. Council staff notes those 4 items. I'll just read them real quick. The EDC has provided additional comments in the packet, and so the 4 items were additional details as they could related to the fiscal 22 budget enhancements that were recommended by the executive, additional details about MCDC's strategy and approach to marketing and leveraging the White Oak area for development, specific performance metrics related to federal engagement that Mr. Reamer has been talking about with the EDC quite a bit this last year, including any cost estimates that might be included in fiscal 22's budget for the EDC. And then the last one was an item related when the PHED committee was talking with the KED Museum about the Makers Council that the EDC had been working on prior to COVID. The last thing I'll note is that anything goes today in terms of where things are at, but Mr. Jawando had noted that he did not support the additional enhancements with the use of ARPA, but Mr. Friedson did support that, and that was where we left, at least in the general straw votes that I had. So of course, if anything changes before a final recommendation is made today, that'll be helpful to know. Thank you, Mr. Reamer.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the responses from MCEDC. So why don't we kind of take them up in turn, starting with the White Oak, turning to page, it's page 4 of the PDF document, circle 2 of the packet. So, we've talked about the county's need to execute at a higher level in White Oak, and would greatly appreciate, I think, MCEDC's expertise in helping lead through what is a somewhat murky issue for us and needs leadership and needs kind of focus. Recognizing this is a different, this wasn't in your budget request or in the executive's enhancement. So can you talk to us about, what you could envision doing there, how we might proceed to, add that to the portfolio? In your written response, you've shared that you can develop a detailed plan and you can include that as part of your work program for the coming year.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. White Oak does present a great potential and opportunities in the East County, especially around the Viva White Oak parcel, which is privately held. We have, through our business development team, engaged with the owners of that parcel and tried to provide a number of opportunities for them that encompasses not just what their vision would be, but also other options as well. We see that the Viva White Oak and White Oak area has potential. We would like to continue to provide options to the landowner. We recognize that it is a privately held property and that we would like to be able to see some engagement and some development of that property, even if it's just to kickstart the process for being able to demonstrate that there is opportunities in the East County. So we'll continue to work with the private landowner and with FDA as needed as well too, since they're adjacent to that parcel.
I mean, if we can't make proximity to FDA, a global attraction, and I know it is very broadly for the county, but if we can even make it more precisely in that area, I know we all know that that's the idea here, but somehow we're just yet underperforming. So appreciate your willingness to take that on and include that. I know you have to some extent, but to expand our focus here and get a little smarter and sharper as a county about how we think this could come to fruition. And I understand some of the property owners around there are moving forward, so there may be more opportunity to leverage some of that incoming investment. But
I would like to say that there'd be nothing greater joy for us than developing that East County parcel. Property, those properties have sat dormant for over a decade.
At one point, there was a lot of talk about a new FDA building.
We like to be able to see that developed. So
yeah.
We share your enthusiasm and desire to do so. And we'll continue to bring options and attraction potentials to the landowners.
Oh, great. So you've offered to develop a detailed plan there for MCEDC's work in that, and so I appreciate that and would like to see that included. Gene.
I also just wanted to quickly note that during last week's review of the White Oak Science Gateway PDF, the committee did request an update from the developer. We'll be sure to include the EDC as well as executive staff in that conversation. So that is tangent to the work plan conversation, but just wanted to note that for the record that will be part of the broader conversation to marketing White Oak area.
Awesome. Okay, that's there's not necessarily a budget change associated with this, but that will be in the base budget essentially. Continuing to I suppose it's the WMATA conversation. Is that next, Gene?
One of the items that you did talk about was the White Flint enhancement to market that area. The executive's enhancement and the EDC's response targets it primarily around the White Flint metro and working with several partners, including the county, to see that area developed, including a development of an RFP and entitlements, as was noted in the previous packet that the EDC provided for April 22nd.
Okay, so I'm a little confused on a point here. It appears to me it's being characterized as though the county would ultimately issue an RFP. Yeah, that's the way it seemed to be described in the budget documents. Am I right, Gene?
It was unclear. I will note that we did receive an email recently that suggested that WMATA will be the one issuing the RFP, and that the EDC will, the $250,000 enhancement will be helping the EDC perform the work on behalf of the county or partnering with the county to ensure that that work occurs expeditiously as well as efficiently.
So I just think that's an important clarification. There's no way that the county is issuing an RFP in this location. It's not our property.
Correct.
So any RFP is going to come from, WMATA. And to understand what's going on, there are multiple private property owners in the county at this time proposing significant expansions of development targeting the life sciences community. It's happening in White Flint. It's happening in Germantown. We've been talking about this for years in White Oak. We're talking about urban bio in Bethesda. As part of that, there's a growing interest in White Flint. Private property owners there, especially Federal Realty, have been talking about making bio a focus for their campus development. Executives have been talking a bit about the White Flint Metro property becoming a bio campus. There's a JLL report about urban bio that's inspired a lot of people, a lot of creative thinking. And so the idea, I guess, is to have the MCEDC working on this concept, preparing an RFP, ultimately to be issued by WMATA. And I'm okay with that, but we got a presentation from WMATA a couple months ago about a broader vision of marketing the Red Line corridors and taking advantage of the opportunity to market the whole county's metro proximity functionally, and up and down the Red Line corridor on the west side, with a certain vision, on the east side with a certain vision. And I think we need to move forward on that. And I think the White Flint node is a piece of that, but I don't think we should lose sight, sort of forest for the trees here. And so I would ask my colleagues for support to add to this, to not say we're against doing this, but to add to this, that we ought to be marketing the whole metro corridors, both corridors, and asking MCEDC to work with Metro on that strategy as well. And I think that has some kind of longer term, it has bigger potential, I think, ultimately. We may or may not succeed with any one specific RFP, but marketing the county and positioning the county for urban life sciences, metro proximate, smart growth development, we know that is an essential part of our path forward. So let me just ask Ben Wu if you could, share, if we were to modify that, would MCEDC be able to take that on? Any comments you might have on that approach?
Well, we do want to be able to support the county executive's vision for White Flint. He's identified White Flint as a major economic development growth priority. We can also help support the development of the entire corridor in order to support the growth of innovation-led economy and research and innovation development in those areas as well.
Councilmember Reamer, we are currently working with WMATA on both. So one is not at the expense of the other, and we're happy to do that. We had a meeting with WMATA, I think it was week before last, and have gone through the same presentations on the Red Line as an opportunity. So it would be very easy for us to continue with those discussions. We've been very active with them, and that will continue.
Okay, so so that is feasible for you, and you can take on more than providing feedback and saying you think that's good. You can, and I'm not saying that's what you were going to do, but I just want to be super clear here. Like, you could take on a general program to build the marketing strategy with WMATA
Absolutely.
for the red line corridors.
Absolutely. And the objective was not just to provide feedback, it was to help drive the project, to move it forward
Yes.
at a faster pace.
Good. Glad to hear that. All right, let's talk to council members. Andrew, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, well, I appreciate. I was going to say, I'm hoping that focusing on transit-oriented development, which is a key priority of the county, something that the council has, really doubled down on in recent months and in the past couple of years, but something that we continue to push for is an area that MCEDC should be focusing on, as part of the general work program. It sounds like it is. So I think this is an and, not an or, situation, and helping to drive the project. I think that the county executive's goals are noble, and I think that there are some really good aspects of it. I think that it could use some honing and some focus. I think that MCEDC, it sounds like is being brought in by the executive branch to help provide that. I think that makes sense. And I think that it shouldn't be at the expense. The purpose of the enhancement is so that to me, it's not at the expense of the existing, marketing efforts. But I think that, certainly working with WMATA on a broader strategy for the red line, east and west, which are some of the most important assets that we have, infrastructure that we have in the county, some of which have been realized fully, like Bethesda, and some of which have not, and have some work to do. I think we've created some incentives and some opportunities that make it really attractive and desirable. And I think now it's up to you to help us market it, and up to the private sector to step up to make the investments that are needed. So it sounds to me like it doesn't require a change, but it's a good issue to.
Well, it does. It requires a language change in the sense that we want to be very specific that is also what these funds are for. This enhancement funding is for both efforts, and we'll leave it to MCEDC to figure out how to balance everything out with what you were going to do within your base, but it's, to be clear, we're looking for some deliverables.
Yeah, I had a different impression. So my thought is, at least from what I have heard here, is that as part of the regular work plan, that the metro focus and transit-oriented development and the marketing of the metro properties and their immediate surroundings as part of our broader economic development strategy would be part of the work plan. That this enhancement is specifically to take a lead role and help to hone in on the White Flint
and I guess what I'm
project. I'm fine and comfortable with that based on what I've heard here, but I yield to Councilmember.
Yeah, I would, interested to hear Councilmember Juana's view here. I am concerned about a lack of specificity on the broader vision, and I'm concerned that we have a fair amount of money tied to the, one node of the corridors, and if we don't clear up that we want to have deliverables on the full vision, and that there's resources for that, we're going to end up with the tail wagging the dog. So, I think it's important to specify, and we may need some additional follow-up language about getting some deliverables on the marketing strategy for the both corridors, but that, these funds are available for that as well if needed. I think we could leave it to MCEDC to decide how to divide that up between the various projects of the corridors versus White Flint, distinctly, but that they can draw from these for either would be my recommendation, and then that would be in the base budget funded from ARPA. Councilmember Juana.
I want to understand exactly what you're proposing. Are you proposing something in addition to the enhancement that is proposed?
Thank you. So I think maybe this is the clearest way. Like, we have language before us that is funding an enhancement to for MCEDC to focus on White Flint. And I'm saying we would add language to that provides the focus on the corridors. And therefore, we will have deliverables and we'll have, results. Whereas if we, because I just think we need to have it written down.
Yeah.
I think as a practical matter, it may be fungible with what they were going to do in the base budget already, but it's delivered.
Yeah, I think it's, from what I heard from Mr. Tompkins is that they're already doing that. And that's part of as Councilman Friedson said, it's part of the base budget. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tompkins, but I would think that as was said, transitory development, we've got, these are important centers that we're already kind of doing that as part of the base budget overall strategy. Is that true?
Well, there's a middle ground. All of this has converged over the last 2 or 3 months. So I would say that both interpretations are right. Transit-oriented development is something that has been part of our work plan, but it's taken increasing importance as WMATA has sat with us at the table. And so if you look at the White Flint initiative, you have WMATA there, you have the White Flint district, Friends of White Flint, they're all coming together now. And we are trying to sort through how you do both at the same time. Right. So to your point, our original intention was to use the additional funding to focus more on White Flint, knowing that we would be working with WMATA. When we had the meeting with WMATA 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, it became very clear that we had to put the two together. And so it has been evolving. Yes, it was part of our work plan, but not as much of a priority as it has become since we've been working more closely with WMATA specifically, and since we've been working with the county executive's office on their expectations for moving the White Flint piece of that forward. So it is a little bit convoluted because you have both parties at the table simultaneously. And in terms of setting the priorities, our concern was that the priorities of all the interested parties were not as clear as they needed to be. So we're more than happy to make the Red Line initiative a bigger portion of what we're going to do. But it was not a significant piece of our marketing budget 2 or 3 months ago. And it's become very clear to us to make both work. You have to do both, and you have to integrate them.
Right. And obviously every site is different and has its own,
Yeah. As an example, Twin work is very different from what we would do or propose at White Flint, as an example. But they're all interrelated when it comes to life sciences. So
I guess it's just kind of the core of, yes, they are obviously yes and yes, but what is the point of this enhancement? If the point of this enhancement is for White Flint, I still want to know about what you're doing across the red line. We gave away all this money, in my view, to try to incentivize it. So I want you to be pushing it, but I guess I'm trying to understand for this particular enhancement what makes the most sense.
Well, what I'm understanding is we're being asked to make sure that we include very specific goals and objectives for the Red Line corridor as part of this enhancement. And what we're shaking our head, yes, we are comfortable integrating those as a larger project.
To that point, I just holistically, I've read what you sent back. I think I agree. I just want to say this up front to my colleagues and to everybody. I agree with the county council's staff's recommendation about the metrics and before the money is dispersed here, because I think it still feels a little loose to me. As described, I appreciate the effort. I know you had to come back quickly. So yeah, I think those metrics as part of the work plan would be great. I'm kind of agnostic. I don't know what it functionally means for you to add this language. Does that mean you're focusing less on White Flint with the enhancement? It sounds like no. The answer is no, but I don't again put words in your mouth. So to me, if you're doing it anyway, adding a line or two and setting clear expectations that you're going to use metrics for the entire corridor seems fine, but I don't want to do it at the expense of what the intention of the enhancement is. Does that make sense?
Yes. And
you're also not supporting the funding for the enhancement. You're saying it should be in category 2.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, but I'm quite comfortable separating those two concepts, But I think because if we do end up funding it when we go to the rest of the council, I want it to be the right thing that what it's supposed to be. So I'm sorry, Ms. Tompkins, go ahead. You were going to say
the two projects are interrelated, and so again, because this is evolving, and that's our challenge. That we're learning a lot more about who's bringing resources to the table, whether it's private developers, whether it is WMATA, but it was driven by the county executive's office working more closely with us on White Flint specifically. So that's why we said, okay, let's fish or cut bait. In further meetings with the other partners, it did become clear that you can't separate the two. So we started focusing on White Flint, as has been indicated, but we've learned that you can't separate the two, that you have to put them together as an integrated approach to how you're going to develop that whole area. Okay.
All right. So I'm fine. I think, go ahead, Mr. Friesen.
And to answer the other example, who is doing the RFP? That's why we met with WMATA to clarify that 2 weeks ago. And they want our involvement and help in doing that. That's not the county doing it, it's WMATA doing it. So we sat down with JLL, who's an advisor to WMATA, and WMATA to figure out these pieces. So if you see some area of looseness or confusion, it's because there are so many moving parts. And what MCEDC feels we need to do is to bring it together as an integrated project or series of projects.
Okay. So just my last question before I switch it to my colleague, Mr. Fletcher, does the executive have a position on this as you're hearing it?
Yeah, good morning, Councilmember, and thank you. I am hearing it. And I would say that based on his point and purpose, Mr. Tompkins said it correctly. The focus was White Flint is part of where he wants to put a lot of attention, but you can't deny the other pieces that have to be folded into it as well. And if that's the piece of the process, then I think that we're all comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the comments and questions. I don't really understand here. I think this is being proposed as an or dynamic.
It's not. It's an and. It's an and.
Well, it's not really an and because the enhancement here, from my understanding, I think we're like talking past each other, trying to figure out who gets credit for what project and so forth. But this enhancement, based on everything that we've been told, is about a very specific MOU and a partnership with JLL and other partners that are specifically marketing the White Flint Metro property that the county executive has made a major economic development priority for his administration. We're all welcome to disagree with that being a priority. We're all welcome to have our own opinions of other priorities, but that is the purpose of the enhancement. We also have broader, and this is part of those goals, but we have broader county, longstanding county, and recently doubled down county transit-oriented development goals to maximize the full economic development potential of our metro stations, many of which have not reached the level of their full potential, some of which the county executive has opposed, and he has the right to do that too, and I respect that, and some of which Councilmember Jawando has some disagreements on, and I totally respect that as well. I don't understand why the metrics that are being requested here and the efforts that are being requested here wouldn't be included as part of the regular work plan as a major, broad economic development focus and strategy of how we're focusing on the full maximizing of potential of all of the WMATA properties and their immediate surroundings as core economic development assets, which we all agree on. We might have disagreements on how to use them or what policies to include in them, but everybody agrees that for environmental, economic development, quality of life reasons, we want to maximize the potential. We'd rather not have parking lots, and we'd rather have vibrant places for people and businesses and jobs and daycare and all of that good stuff. So I'm not understanding why we can't, separate from this, say, hey, this is a good idea. Let's continue on this project that you're being asked to do as an enhancement. We can get into a separate discussion of how it should be paid for. That is a legitimate, important conversation that we ought to have, whether it should be an ARPA enhancement or whether it should be in the base budget, respect that conversation too, but say, okay, you either support this or don't support this project and moving forward. And then separate from that, supplementing that effort, what is the broader strategy for our transit-oriented development and maximizing the full potential of our WMATA stations and their immediate surroundings? And can we include in the work plan metrics on that? Because that broader second piece of it, and I appreciate where Councilman Reamer, you're coming from on this, that is going to continue for the next decade, 10, 20, 30 years, because it's always going to be a question in the county as an urbanizing county of what we are doing and how successful we are being at maximizing the full economic development and quality of life potential of our metro stations. That is going to end when this MOU expires at White Flint. So I just, tying them two together, I don't really understand, but I think that we can do both and we should do both.
Let's do both, and let's ask MCEDC to put the broader marketing strategy into the base budget and follow up with additional deliverables, and they'll have this funding for as an enhancement, and we'll see how they come back to us with how they'll implement that.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we can accommodate that. And I should also add, it's not just the WMATA metro stations as well that we're looking at transit-oriented development. We have been engaged with the Purple Line community as well to try to for future construction to ensure that there would be economic development potential within those Purple Line stations as well.
Okay, but I just want to say, to be really clear, if we're working with WMATA on marketing their sites, we should be doing all the sites. That's what I'm trying to get to here. So, this is not just, okay, well, we all favor smart growth. So I'm not really directing this comment at you, Ben, but, therefore, that's what we're doing. We'll just keep doing that. I would like to see deliverables about marketing all of the WMATA sites as part of this program. And I do agree with you about the Purple Line. And I thought you've already done a great job with the reach advisors, kind of crystallizing some vision about that. So, encourage you to continue with that as well. Thank you. But let's not also disperse into saying, well, it's just generally transit-oriented development. We got a presentation from WMATA about marketing the corridors with some specific character and intent around each of the sites. That has to be prioritized and kind of taken to the next level. So,
yeah, but I would
all agree with that.
If that's the goal, and I think it's a laudable goal, and I agree with you, but then there's a conversation that needs to happen between WMATA and the county executive to have an MOU for the corridors for all of the.
That's what we're trying to get through this.
The sites, but this is not the way. This is not the way to do it. Adding it to this
MOU could be done with MCEDC. The MOU could be done with MCEDC and WMATA. I think that's what we're saying.
And now we're asking MCEDC to have a competing MOU with the county executive and the county government. I mean, I just don't
there is no MOU with
this conversation.
What's that?
I would say I don't really understand. I mean, I see these as complementary issues. I think we're trying to snatch conflict from the jaws of consensus. I think there is generally agreement.
I'm trying to get specificity about marketing the full corridors and marketing the individual sites. I think Bill Tompkins has outlined a feasible way for us to bring that together. Gene, you've raised your hand.
Just to help operationalize this, other than waiting for the EDC to then approve a work plan that will then be able to be shared with the council, where you all will be able to see what the work plan entails. As noted in the report, as Mr. Jawanda mentioned, the other way for the council to ensure that happens is to put a budget provision that the EDC and the executive will work on making sure that that's incorporated in the contract and shared with the council prior to disbursement for the need of that program. It doesn't hold up any of the money. It doesn't hold up any of the work in that instance, but what it does is give a clear marker for you all to see the work. Other than that, the budget provision will just be an appropriation, one total for EDC, and then will be between the executive and the EDC then to work on a contract to make the funding or implement the funding as recommended in fiscal 22.
Okay. So we'll see that in writing. Last point quickly. if we could have some budget language, we've got a lot of good detail here to get us going with the tech transfer and federal engagement, which this committee has made a major priority, starting with our joint policy forum in September 2019 with MCEDC around tech transfer. We're starting to see some new programs, the Federal Tech Transfer Consortium. We've got Phil Singerman. We got a lot of stuff in progress. I would like to see just more. We've got a beginning of a budget work plan, but I just want to ensure that we have some additional specificity and deliverables on that. Seeking my colleagues' support here for some budget language that we would say of the existing base budget, 200,000 will be reserved for the tech transfer program, and we'll see their work plan to release that.
Where's that number coming from?
That's well, Ben, could you we asked Ben for some additional details about what they expect is their level of effort.
Well, first off, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being such a champion for technology transfer and federal engagement. We do see that that's a very important component of our innovation-led economy, and being able to maximize and leverage the federal assets that we have, and being able to provide commercialization and collaboration opportunities with the federal laboratories will help with innovation as well as entrepreneurship. So the $200,000 figure was something that was arrived at as a marker, but it's possible, maybe perhaps probable, that we'll be able to exceed that. But I think that in terms of making sure that we continue to have it as an organizational priority in our work plan, the technology transfer and federal engagement, that seemed like a marker that was reasonable.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you're going to do it anyway or exceed it, that seems fine to me.
I think it's a belts and suspenders thing here. I think we're seeking to, just be written down about what we're trying to accomplish here. That's all.
I like writing. I'm in favor of writing.
Very good. So, Gene, you'll develop that. Okay, thank you. Gene, are there any additional items in this, or do you have clarity about what we've discussed so far?
The only item that wasn't talked about in detail that was provided by the EDC was related to the Makers Council. So I'll pause there if there was quick.
Thank you. We had a great conversation about this at the outset of the term. Everything kind of got swept aside as you wrote it, as you noted in your follow-up, Ben. Thank you. We've been executing on a lot of this program area with great success, and so we thought it'd be a good time to kind of return to the big picture here and put some of that structure in place to build the momentum. So you kind of outlined that in your response, and you're going to be able to, please let us know how you can implement that going forward here.
Yeah, we had a pre-existing network that we used in order to help support the local production fund and get and invite solicitations and grant applications. And so I believe we have begun the process of creating a network and a base, and we can help to establish a closer relationship than we already have with Kid Museum to help support the growth of that network as well.
Great. So you've outlined on the final page of the packet, convening an advisory council or a working group to do outreach and to launch it and to build the sector. So that's terrific, and we'll look forward to seeing progress and success on that in the work program. Okay, so with the let's refresh where we are. We have a broad question about whether we will use ARPA funding or not for the enhancements, and we have some specifics about ensuring that there will be a detailed marketing strategy for various sites in the red line corridors, and we can make that part of the base budget. It doesn't have to be, called out as part of the enhanced funding, but we're, certainly, I hope there's agreement that we ought to direct MCEDC to build that program. And so, I guess, that would be what I will move, is that we fund that program using the ARPA funding, and with the additional specificity that there would be this marketing strategy within the base budget. Gene, is that clear enough based on? Okay.
So
it's the and strategy that you are speaking.
Yeah, so it's part of their general work plan that, which would be ongoing, not just the ARPA, about the red line corridor.
Correct. Funding. I mean, it's, broadly and intentionally, it's taking what we were presented by WMATA to the next level.
Just kind of summarize what I understand, Mr.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to do that, please, Gene. Thank you.
So related to the ARPA funding, this goes back to last week, there was both Mr. Jawando and Mr. Friedson weighed in per where their recommendation was. I did not hear any specific one from you, Mr. Reamer, other than you haven't disagreed. So at least on the ARPA funding, what council staff will show for the council is that the FED committee is supporting 2-to-1 the use of the $1 million of ARPA as recommended by the executive for the enhancements.
I'm willing to support that as 2-to-1, but I'm asking for my colleagues' support on the broader metro marketing plan.
And that'd be my second. And then, so that's item 1, and item 2 would be related to the budget provisions that we've talked about. I heard again, Mr. Jawando note support at least for the federal engagement and just more specificity. And so I would I can draft the budget provisions, make them available to the EDC executive staff and FED committee. But the budget provisions will be part of the FED packet. I have not heard from Mr. Friedson related to those, but so right now I have heard 2 supports for that issue.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with the budget provisions, and I think that, I think that the metro corridor funding could just be in the general budget provisions as part of the ongoing work plan, because I don't see that as a one-time project. I see that as an ongoing effort that should begin with consultation with WMATA to come up with what that strategy is. It could turn into a one-time project, but right now it's a focus and an intentionality that we're looking to have MCEDC pursue. I think, to me, we're giving direction to MCEDC as a council of, we'd like you to pursue that as part of your regular work plan, which is how the process I think works. So I think we're mostly in agreement here.
I think so too.
And on that issue, and then just obviously the language we talked about in the overall budget, if it is going to be included, that there be the contract, metrics and included as you described, Gene.
Absolutely.
And,
I was trying to say that too. I just want to make sure it's reflected that I agree. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. And I was just going to say one other thing and yes, I'm still in the same place on the ARPA funding. Again, I appreciate all the conversation and the feedback. I just think that, based on the past history, and I'd like to see these things be done. It's not that I'm against the things, it's that I'd like to see them be done within the base budget and have a little proof point, and then we can, look at it next year as part of the budget. So I think it's more of just what's the appropriate use of the ARPA funding at this point in time. But
a reasonable posture to be sure. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We have committee recommendation. Okay.
We do.
Thank you. We will need to adjourn now to convene as the joint committees. Thank you to MCEDC for working through this with us, and look forward to continuing our partnership. Very good. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And I'll be.
Specific